Hi, this is Red,
And this is Shane.
and today we're talking about video games as a narrative medium.
Yeah, they're really good for showing how a character can go through a story.
Right, and so ever since I was little, I played video games for their stories. I mean, I know a lot of people played them for the gameplay and stuff like that, but I really got into video game stories because right when I started playing video games, that's when there was kind of a renaissance with stories. There was The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. There were the Final Fantasy games, the later Final Fantasy games coming out, like 7, 8, 9. Um, and Super Mario 64 kind of had a story. I mean, it was okay, but
They had Mario RPG as well.
right, which unfortunately I never played.
Oh.
So that is
He's talking about I thought you were just talking about the story renaissance in games in general.
yeah. I mean, I think the big push was with the first Final Fantasy game,
hmm
but I could be wrong.
I mean, story has always been a part of games. I mean, even ever since Pac-Man with wanting to get the dots. That's even though it's a very simple story, it's not the kind of story you're talking about with the narrative and everything.
Right, but I do think that video games can be a storytelling medium, and I think that it's getting closer to the point where it's actually like reputable. Sort
Mm,
of like when film started out. When film started out, you had silent films that told a simple story, and it was more about a gimmick than actually doing anything that
right.
um, had a lot of value. I mean, there were
Yes.
people walking outside of the factory, and that blew people's minds for like what 3 years, and then people got bored of that. So you
And I
have to keep
guess.
people interested in it. I mean, obviously, film historians will find
Yeah.
that interesting, but show somebody who doesn't know the history of film.
hmm
The very first film that was made, the people walking away from the
The
train station,
factory. Yeah.
yeah, the factory, and most likely they will be bored of it. Now it's significant, but at
Yes.
the same time, there's no story being told. You don't know anything about the workers, and it's all just a gimmick. I mean, it's a moving photograph. That's what the Lumiere brothers believe cinema to be, which was later proven wrong with the I believe it's the arrival of the fire agent or something like that. The arrival of the firemen.
Arrival of the Fireman.
It was
What is that?
the it's the first film
Uh-huh.
essentially because it actually tells a story and they use editing. A firefighter goes up, saves a woman from a burning building.
Uh-huh.
That's pretty much the film. But
Right.
you see outside, you see inside, you go back outside again.
Now, speaking from that point of view, as how far movies have come, just to still tell the story with the narrative and editing, we can look
Mhm.
at games in some sort of totally different way because you have so much more control over what the viewer sees than any kind of movie. You could have a whole scene going on in front of them, but if the viewer wants to go around and explore the world, you can let that happen. That's the difference that a game allows, and we shouldn't have to put them in the same kind of story standards that we put a book or a movie into.
Right, but then a big question comes in is like how much control do you want to give the gamer?
Well,
Because any if you give the gamer too much control,
mm-hmm,
then they could possibly get distracted, and
mm-hmm.
do you want to keep them focused or do you want them to stray away?
So
And I
in
think game developers have this question of like what they actually find.
in
um,
huh? Yeah. Continue. Finish what you were going to say.
I was just saying, I think that developers have this question of what they feel is appropriate um, to keep the gamer focused. Now, I personally would like more focused games.
hmm
I prefer the one player games that are more story driven, more
Yeah.
linear.
Yes.
Um, just because I don't want to be playing a game for 200 plus hours. I know some people do, but that's just not my type of game. So stuff like Skyrim and stuff like that, I'm not knocking anybody who plays them. It's just for me, those games need an editor, kind of like a
Yeah.
movie that goes on too long. You know, like there's
Well,
a lot of boring shit in video games
yeah.
they literally put in just to make the game longer. Like it
That's sort of
doesn't.
why they have things like in Skyrim they have like the fast travel systems and things like that they have in place, so that once you get done with your exploration of the world, you can kind of start finding the interesting things, making yourself more than just a viewer of a scene and a story, but an actual shaper of the world. And in my opinion, games like Skyrim, you don't really, you may shape the political landscape of things. And I haven't, completed Skyrim. I spent a lot of time, but I've only completed a few threads in it, without even going to the main story. But it seems like in a game like that, where they put a lot of focus on the world instead of and not a lot of focus on the relationships between the characters, they miss out on a lot of the interesting scenarios that can happen that can play out like a movie does. That your character can take a part of.
Right, and then there are more narrative games like God of War, Metal Gear Solid, and then there are games that even try to be movies like Heavy Rain and
Indigo
some of the
Prophecy and what do you call it? Their
Beyond
newest
Two
one.
Souls.
Yeah, Two
Yeah.
Souls. So those type of games, those games where you follow a character, where it's basically a story on rails. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? That's what stories have been up until games. All stories have been stories on rails. You know what I mean?
Right, and but I
And
think
that's the opportunity that a narrative in a game gives us to give us a story that doesn't have to be on rails.
I I kind of like stories on rails though. I kind of like this thing that Telltale's doing, which is very similar to what the people at Quantic Dream are doing,
Hmm.
as well as the people at BioWare
Yes.
that make the Mass Effect games.
Yes.
Um, I think those people do it really well, except the third game basically said, hey, we're going to have all these different endings, but it literally was like a green explosion, a blue explosion, and a red explosion.
Yeah, I hear a lot of that as a criticism to every game from that one game, as though that game is like the quantifier for every single story mechanic in a game. It's sort of like saying that if it's on a TV then it's not good. You know.
Well, I think that developers should be pushing a stronger narrative. One of the best examples is The Last of Us. Um, The Last of Us, even though I've been like a huge fan of Metal Gear Solid, I will argue that The Last of Us is the closest a video game has gotten to a compelling narrative that
Mhm.
rivals something in Hollywood.
Mhm. Yeah, the storyline of The Last of Us is very dramatic, and it has a lot of opportunities where you feel like you're really pushing it forward with the whole goal of getting Ellie back to those the Fireflies, and the whole reason why his impetus becomes that. It's a really great way to use tropes as a way to push your character forward in a story. And not there were games that had used that before, but not in that such a profile. Not such a well-known game.
Right, and I like the narrative structure that Naughty Dog uses. They've done it in the Uncharted games as
Hmm.
well, at having the characters interact with each other while you're playing the game, so that there's never this lag time. Because
Yes.
one of the biggest problems that I have with a lot of games, even games that come out now, is there's a lot of bullshit time.
Yes.
You know, like you just have characters wandering and wandering and wandering, and like you're finding chests and you're going out and making things and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
like your characters aren't really interacting, and that
Yes.
might be fun to some people. But
Hmm.
like honestly, I'm like, okay, I it would for me, it's like watching a TV show
Hmm.
on its beach episode. Like that's what that narrative structure feels like to me. It's just I get that you have to make the game longer, but I would rather have a shorter game if you're going to give me this shit.
Well, if you look at other, a lot of RPGs, how they have their fantasy RPGs from back before. Their story structure was built on that stuff because they were like these games are originated in that kind of an arcade where the more time you spend playing it, the more money they get type of thing. And the transition we got to look at is one where we go after what is pushing forward these characters, and that largely depends on the kind of game you're going to play. If
Right.
you go to a point-and-click game or a story-based game where it's a lot of reading, you're going to get a lot of that. Phoenix Wright, a lot of Game Boy games that use a lot of written words to push the story forward rather than player interaction. These kind of stories on rails that there are, they need to like you were saying from Telltale Games. Telltale Games is a really good example of making you feel like you're a part of that story. Like from Sam Max to The Walking Dead to Game of Thrones to the Tales from the Borderlands, they have done it the best out of anybody else.
Well, one developer that I think did it really well. I believe it's Bethesda with the Fallout games.
Yes. Yeah, their new Fallout. I have a lot of high hopes for their new Fallout 4 game.
I mean, I've been absolutely addicted to this fucking Fallout Shelter game.
Mm-hmm. What is it? I've heard a lot about it, but I haven't even really played it at all.
It's basically a sim. It's free, and you are trying to protect a vault,
right?
And you force breed people. You have to build buildings. I mean, build different things inside the vault.
Wait, didn't you just say that you didn't like games where you had to build stuff?
But that is the gameplay mechanic. No.
I'm kidding. I'm just joking.
Right, yeah. But that is the gameplay mechanic. It's a very simple game. And
do you get a lot of story out of a game like that?
No, I don't.
That's a problem. So you could have a game like with one of those text-based games where you have a already written story where you're just the watcher of the story. And you can have like one of those match 3 games, like that game 2 Dots or Threes or whatever, like that Vault Hunter game. They are telling you a story. They're telling you the story of the vault that you're making.
Right, but so yeah, there's a little bit of that story, but like what I'm saying is, if a game gives you a story, like a compelling narrative and stuff like that, and then you're wandering around just bullshitting, I got a problem with that. That's not the game. It's literally just filler, just thrown in there to make the game longer. Whereas, with Fallout Shelter, that is the game.
Yeah, the game is the filler between moments in your life.
I don't really, Fallout Shelter isn't a narrative game. I was talking about narrative games.
But that narrative game is a filler, or not that narrative game. That game is a filler in your life. You play it when you're not doing anything, right?
Right. Okay, so, but that's for short segments.
Yeah.
It's not like some games where you literally have to wander around for hours because save spots are like sporadic. And I mean, we've pretty much made save spots obsolete now, but some games still like to use them. Like if you like that fucking game, Dark Souls or
Bloodborne.
Yeah, if you like games like that, fine, whatever. They're too hard. There's a little bit of story, not enough to keep me.
So have you heard of the game called Joe Deaver's Lone Wolf?
No, I haven't.
That game is really a hybrid game where like you've played games on like your iPhone, like that Unreal game, Infinity Blade.
Yeah.
It's sort of like Infinity Blade crossed with a Choose Your Own Adventure book.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
So the majority of the game is in a story, and you choose adventures of the characters that goes along. But then there's combat. It's an actual video game where you got to like actually use skill to defeat the enemies, and that's referred to in the story later on. Like after your battle, it tells you what happened in the battle in the story as you go on through the game. And it has a little basic map system where you can go to like different areas. You click your map system, and it's basically another scene. The economics of storytelling in that game are so tight that it's like every scene is advancing the plot of that game. And that's sort of a problem that you're talking about, where there's no economics in the use of the character's actions.
Right.
Just like,
and
Hmm? Yeah.
Well, and I was going to say, oftentimes another problem is there's no emotional weight to whatever you do in the game. Like, take a game like Grand Theft Auto. Like your character has like a motivation and like he oftentimes like look at Grand Theft Auto 4, he's a guy like trying to change his life and stuff, but like you can commit mass murder in the game and like do all this crazy shit and then just wait for the cops to go away, and it has no effect on the actual gameplay. Like
Yeah,
what you did.
that is a question. How involved do you want, like, how much personality do you want to give the person who's playing the game? In an open world sandbox game like that, how much of yourself do you want to put in that character, and how much do you want to have the player put into that character?
Well, I think that it's an opportunity for developers to incorporate something that's a little bit more involved. Um,
It's
I,
only
I,
involved. The game is nothing without the player.
right, but I'm saying that I I understand that some people play video games for escapism. I've had conversations with people talking about how every fucking medium should be escapist, but like I disagree. The developer should never make something that is for the pure sake of somebody trying to get away from their fucking life. If they play something to get away from their life, that's fine. But I really don't like this idea of,
Having
you know,
yourself be the character.
well, I don't like this idea of,
You make your own character.
no, I don't like that. Can you let me finish? All right. I don't like this idea of people saying that video games should be escapist because, oh, my life's so terrible. And no, you're not putting yourself in as the character. I mean, you can, like, you have the sandbox games and everything like that, but that shouldn't be the only thing. Like, I understand that people play video games for escapism, but as a narrator, you shouldn't make a game that is simply so that somebody can get out of their life. You should contribute something. You should have some meat to it. It's like watching a film that's pure escapism. Like, okay, but I'm not interested. I'll forget about that shit in like 10 minutes.
Well, that's because in that film where it's pure escapism, you had no hand in making it. In a game where you create the escapism, you are the artist of that,
But
vision that
but
you've
here's
made.
the thing: if it's an art medium, it needs to address things that are going on today, or it needs to address things that make up the humanity as a whole. It needs to, contribute something. Otherwise, it's pointless. It's
But
not.
games now are something that has not existed in traditional art before. They have never made like a thing where a person can come in to the world you've made and do whatever they want, make it into whatever they want to. At what point does it stop being the developer's game and start being the player's game?
Well, I mean that is an interesting question. I mean, I guess it depends on like what kind of game you're playing. The more narrative games, obviously, the developer has more control over how the person experiences it. I mean, even with Telltale games,
Yes.
it's more of what the developer wants you to experience than like what you want to experience. And Fallout is kind of a mixture of both. It's kind of, you experience it and then the developer tells you what you experience. It's a little bit more expansive. Granted, those kind of games are glitchy as fuck, but yeah.
Well, but it's not about that's not you're not focusing on the glitches. You're focusing on the role that narrative plays in a game, and we got to accept that there are other kinds of narratives that can be created in these interactive mediums.
Well, but I do think it's a medium that they should be pushing harder. Like, they should be pushing the narrative stuff
It's just that
harder.
much harder to make in games too.
I don't care if it's harder to make in games. They need to do it.
So
Like,
look at this, right? So as a person who creates a movie, right? You might look at it creating a whole world, or you might look at it as following one person's story in that world.
right.
But for an interactive place where you can have, a character who can have you the player can have control over what your character does, or you got to follow the storyline. You got to accept that they might want to go off the rails.
But here's the thing. Another thing that I'm liking seeing the change in is video games are expanding more to just run around and kill shit. Like, I that kind of narrative simply is boring to me. I understand a lot of people fucking like it.
Yeah.
I'm not harping people for liking it, but I'm saying as a narrative story structure, even as a gameplay mechanic, games need to move past just like, okay, there are a whole bunch of enemies in the room, fucking kill them all and stuff like that. Also, even war games do this shit. And like, why can't you make a fucking war game that's more like what a fucking soldier actually experiences? Like, a real fucking soldier isn't going to experience gunfire every fucking day. He's not going to experience, like, you know, just countless fucking hordes of people, like, coming at him. Like, I'm sorry if you think that's what war is. That's not.
Wouldn't it be great if they created a military simulation type of game where you had to do, like, you know, the same shit that we had to do, like sweep the deck sweep the ship in the morning, and, like, you know, make sure you had enough time for your sleep meter. You got to make sure you eat at the right time.
Actually, they did make that game. It does exist. It's called The Great Escape.
Yeah.
Well, it was sort of like that, where you had to, like, follow the regiments and everything like that, but you're trying to escape.
See, but that's only for, is that for a prison?
Well, it's kind of like a prison style.
Or what is it? What is it? I need to find it. Let me see here.
Yeah.
The Great Escape?
Yeah, just give me a minute.
But yeah, you know, we'll eventually we'll get into more things where a game gives us that opportunity to explore things like you know, you enter a room and it's like a regular room in your house. It has cabinets. You can open the cabinet and look inside. You know, that's stuff that already exists now with that game that just came out, Sunset. It was like this maid game where you play a maid who works for a billionaire while the country is going through an upheaval. Oh. And like, let me see, I'm trying to figure out what it was called. Sunset Maid game. Oh, it's called Sunset. And it's a first-person video game thriller where you play as a maid who works for a okay, you will investigate a single penthouse by sunset and decide how you will influence the explosive situation. So it's sort of like a really neat sort of story there. You're gone. Really in depth as far as stuff goes, like day-to-day type of things.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but
it sold terribly. They sold like 10 copies, and I was surprised.
That sounds like the Penn and Teller game where like you have to drive from one fucking city to another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a really bad game. It was terrible. There was a lot of interaction, but not too much else. I want to make something like that, but instead of actually being able to like click the button and it opens, do like Surgeon Simulator, where you gotta like Surgeon Simulator, like make dinner. You played Surgeon Simulator, right?
Yeah.
Where he's got where he's got your hands kind of like crazy and floppy, and you kind of got to do stuff.
Yeah.
That's a pretty fun game. But yeah, as a artistic medium, I guess, you know, it's not wrong to expect more out of these people who have the skill to be able to put things into this world and make them into something that like is enjoyable by somebody and not attach a message to it.
Right. What I really want to see video games try to attempt to do is to give tabletop RPGs a run for its money in storytelling.
I don't. I mean, the thing about it is though, it's like with a tabletop RPG, you just gotta like, you know, you don't need anything to be able to make it. All you need is imagination.
Well, yeah,
and the game it's a lot more difficult to, you know, account for all the different scenarios and things that happen.
What you're saying is difficult. It's not impossible. And granted, there are limitations, but I think developers are playing it safe way too much. I think that developers need to push themselves.
But do you like you don't play a lot of RPG games though, do you?
I've played a handful. Most of most of the reasons why I mean, I simply don't have enough time to play a lot of video games that are out right now.
So that's the
And
problem there. You wouldn't have enough
well,
time to play something that had that kind of interactivity that a tabletop game has.
well, yeah, that's true. I don't know the people. There are a lot of reasons why I haven't gotten into the tabletop. I mean, you have to know people, you have to be
Yeah,
around at a certain time.
that's the
I
only thing you need to be mostly is be around at a certain time.
Yeah, well, I just don't have the time or flexibility for that. So,
So why would
the
you have it in a game?
why would I have it in game? Because I can play it on my own time.
You would still need the other people to play it. That's like the reason why D&D and tabletop
Well,
games are good.
I'm talking about like one player games. Like you could totally do that with that. It doesn't have to be a MMORPG. And quite frankly, I would prefer a game that isn't just based on, hey, we're a team, we're fighting and killing shit, because half the time tabletop RPGs, that's all it is anyways.
No, a lot of the time it's a lot more like each character has their own goals, and you all gotta go together to complete those goals, maybe. And
Yeah.
along the way, there's like interactions between your characters and other things where you might build your character's like character. That's the kind
mean,
of stuff that the game's about mostly.
but that all depends on how willing the GMs and stuff like that are willing to make the story interact, like truly interactive, or whether they're just going to make it simple, which a lot of people do. Like a lot of people just don't have the imagination to do something that's a little bit more complicated than just a simple narrative.
Okay, I'll give you another example. There's this new game out called Microscope, right? It's not particularly new, but it's a game called Microscope, and it sort of takes that snowflower type of way of storytelling, or not snowflower, snowflake type of storytelling, and makes a game out of it. Where you the players who are playing the game are the observers of the known universe, and together you all will create a timeline for that known universe. And then as the game goes along, you go into those timelines of ages and create scenes that alter the entire history, and you can see it all happening. And since you take turns, all the players are doing all that, and scenes are played out between players.
Well, that sounds interesting. I don't know anything about it.
That's the kind of alternative kind of storytelling you got to look at when you look at things like these. You might want to look at an entire timeline of a world from beginning to end, and then there might be a part like a certain age that you want to investigate further as a player character. So you go to that age and you pick out the particulars of what's going on, and you play through one of the scenes in that age. And by doing that, you affect the timeline that you've created.
Right. I see what you're talking about. I just haven't seen that in video games very much.
They have another game called 40 Thieves, or like Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, but it's called 40 Thieves, right? And in the beginning of the game is you take a bowl and you fill it full of random dice, right? And you all go around, and each person makes up a whole totally new game where when it's their turn, and they got to use the dice in the middle of the thing.
But what you're talking about is something based on randomization. It's not what you're doing doesn't actually affect it. It's just based on chance, right?
On which one?
40 Thieves.
40
one
Thieves.
You just mentioned.
It's the one whose story appeases the king the most. So I think that it's like after you all play the game, you pick one game that was the worst, and that player loses. And it's a different games. Like you could make a tabletop game, a role-playing game, anything to do with the things that are in the middle. You can put dice and chips or playing cards in that bowl, whatever you want. Those are the tools that you have to make a game right there on the spot for that night.
Okay, but what you're saying, I don't understand how
they're all a narrative. Each game has to have a narrative that advances further to the story until it gets to the end.
Okay, well, I don't know. I don't know the game, and what you're saying doesn't make a lot of sense to me right now. But that's fine. It's one of those things that describing it may seem clear, but it's pretty abstract right now.
Here, I'll pull it up.
No, I looked it up. I just
40 Thieves.
Yeah, I did.
I think I may be describing it wrong. Not
you're
the
talking
Alibaba
about
game.
Sunset. You're talking about the game that totally lost its funding.
No, I didn't send that link. That was from before. It didn't lose any funding. It got funded, but when they made it,
Oh, it didn't make a lot of money, so they got
yeah,
like bitch faced about
yes.
it.
Hmm.
Okay.
They didn't get bitch faced. They were like, we can't believe that our terrible game didn't make a lot of money. Oh well.
Well, you make a fucking terrible game and you won't make money. I mean, that just seems like simple stuff. And it's one of the things. Like, I think that feeding off of that, pre-orders are
Hmm.
the bane of fucking video games right now.
Pre-orders.
Yeah, but
When was the last time you pre-ordered a game?
the last time I pre-ordered a game. Oh yeah, I know exactly the last video game I pre-ordered, and I said never fucking again after that one. And that was Watch Dogs.
Mm.
Fuck that game.
Yeah, I know, right? It was so terrible. I can't believe it was the worst.
Well, and they paid a shit ton of people to make that game sound really fucking awesome.
And it looked like it was being such a great game.
Yeah, and literally it was Grand Theft Auto with a fucking cell phone.
And yeah,
And not as interesting as Grand
exactly.
Theft Auto.
Exactly. And like I had so much hype for that game too.
Yeah, and all it was, like, that's one of those games that it could have pushed the hacker narrative. It could have, talked about relevant issues in today. It could have done anything better, but like the game was burdened by not only its graphics engine, which they tricked people in thinking that it had better graphics than what it did.
Yeah, I know, right? There was like a big giant stink that happened about that.
Yeah. They also said, I also heard that it was going to be really accurate to fucking Chicago. I'm in Chicago. I didn't know where shit was.
So like, did you use the game as like a way to navigate the city?
I tried to, but pretty much the only thing they have right is the park downtown. Like that's the
it.
only part of the game that's even close to Chicago. Yeah, it's bullshit.
How do they even get past their QA?
I don't know what that stands for.
The quality assurance? People who look at the game before it comes out?
That's the problem. I mean, we could segue this off into Gamergate if you want to, because
I don't know what Gamergate has to do with quality assurance of video games. It has to do
a
lot with the what do you call it? That woman Harley Quinn or whatever.
Okay, can you stop tapping? Because it's no, actually it doesn't. That's what the anti-Gamergaters want you to know. That's what the anti-Gamergates are pushing, the narrative. Really, Gamergate was started. Yeah, there's the whole thing with Zoe Quinn, and she apparently fucking slept with somebody, and they gave her a good review or whatever, and that's what they claimed. That started, but before then, there was this narrative of people getting bribed to give good reviews, people getting, and this whole idea that gamers, like that game companies were anti-consumer. They were all about making money. They weren't about like making quality games. They were all about these pre-orders. They were all about really, really shady shit that doesn't equal good games. It equals lots of money, but it doesn't equal good games. Mm-hmm. And so the gamers got angry about that. Then this woman named Zoe Quinn complained. She put her game up on the Steam Greenlight thing. It didn't do really well, so she claimed sexism. And then they produced her game. People saw the game. It wasn't that good. They started doing that. She pushed the sexism narrative. Yes, she apparently slept with a bunch of guys, but like, I don't really fucking care about that. That's her personal life. She can do whatever she wants. But I think the real issue that Gamergate really wants to talk about is, and you've probably heard it before, and they joke around about it all the fucking time, but it is ethics in journalism, which means, you need to be addressing a story correctly. And even the anti-Gamergate side has had so much influence that they are literally begging to have a voice, and the anti-gamergaters are use the media and everything to just push this sexist narrative that's not fully existent. They also talk about like how trans people are being oppressed and stuff like that in Gamergate, which is bullshit too, because like half the time trans people are on the Gamergate side. Mm-hmm. So it's just the hard thing is you have to do your research on it, because the actual true narrative about Gamergate is not available to the public easily, because the news media is just grabbing the most, you know, racy parts of it. You know, they aren't grabbing the boring parts, which are, you know, oh, this guy got offered a computer if he was given a good if he gave a good review for Shadows of Mordor. You know, which I heard was a pretty good game, but still, that's some shady shit, right? You know, a company says, "Hey, review our game well, and we'll give you something." I don't
think that had to do with women. That was just how the game journalism industry went.
Well, yeah, exactly. It has nothing to fucking do with women, but women are, but the anti-Gamergate women are using any sort of criticism to Gamergate to say, "Hey, what you're talking about is sexism in video games and all this kind of stuff." And people are like, "Dude, we don't fucking care." I mean, like, obviously, like video games aren't
sexist. They have like a good display of, you know, characters and colors.
Well, same thing. I mean, the real issue is, I mean,
it was the journalism, how the advertising companies were like wooing the journalists, and how the big journalist magazines were making, you know, concessions by giving games good scores so they could play them earlier.
Right, and this whole thing about women being portrayed poorly in video games is just, I mean, that's a problem with all fucking mediums. Like, why are video games somehow held at a higher regard when, like, you know, fucking rap videos are way fucking worse than video games. You know, there's sexism in all media. Oh yeah. So like, why pick on one media when it's literally every media's problem?
And you gotta look at it like, look at how long it's taken for books to properly display things from, you know, both sides of any kind of character as man, woman, black, white, purple, whatever. You know. Well, yeah. We're only just now getting a good display of books, like within the last, 100 years maybe. We're probably getting a good display of all the stories, as opposed to like just the rich people or just one particular subset of groups.
And these people complaining about like that sort of thing in video games, they complain, they say they need to change it. And I'm like, you need to change it. They don't need to do shit. You do it, and if it makes money, they'll do more of it. But they don't want to think in terms of money. They just say, oh, well, this is a problem, it needs to change. Well, guess what? Like, even a game that was great, fucking Tomb Raider didn't do as well as a lot of other.
It wasn't such a great. I can't believe so many people have been gave shit to Tomb Raider. That's a really good game.
No, it is a fucking amazing game. In fact, I would say that it is easily the best in the series.
I'm playing through it right now.
Yeah, it's fucking amazing. It is. Like, you experience her struggles and stuff like that, and I like the fact that she isn't a badass. She gets hurt
all the time. She is not, she doesn't have superhero, the most thing she has is that she won't die. She will lose an arm, maybe get a broken leg, but she won't die. She won't.
Except she dies really brutal deaths in the death scene.
But she does die. But I mean, like in the story, they don't have the story continue on after she died.
Right. The story
it's not called Lara Croft. It's called Tomb Raider. Let's find the person who comes after Lara Croft.
I mean, they could have easily called the game Survivor, but unfortunately,
they should have called it Death Island and started it off back in the 50s when the first person landed on the island and that person died. And it could have had like 15 different narratives, and each of them getting further and further into what the reason with Death Island was.
Speaking of Death Island, Dead Island. Let's talk about Dead Island. Remember that fucking trailer that was amazing, and then the game?
Because I got so hyped over that trailer. I thought the game was gonna like it didn't even have any gameplay in it. For some reason it just hyped me up. And then the game came out as a first person, shit fest, and I was like, thanks video game industry, you really informed me of that one.
Well, that was a game that tricked you into thinking that there was going to be a narrative of some sort, correct?
Yeah. And there were narratives. There are a lot of quests in that game, but it's nothing like in that.
But it's just fucking bullshit quests where it's like, hey, we need you to get this item in this place, and et cetera, et cetera. Like, I really want more video games to stray away from that idea. Like, I get that people like fucking quests. I get it, but it's
not like that. It's like I wish the zombies would have stayed. Like, if it's an island, there are more people. You kill all the zombies, they're all dead. Now you got to build up the island. Why doesn't it go any like that? There's always zombies.
Yeah,
it doesn't make sense. Kill some stuff and keep a place clear. Like in freaking that's as far as these dead games go. As far as zombie games or whatever, clear out the place and don't have the zombies respawn. Like, is that too fucking hard to not have a zombie spawn inside your base?
Well, but also they have this idea that that's what people want, which gamers need to say, hey, that's not what we want. We want something that's a little bit more compelling, something that actually is challenging, because having like respawn and all that kind of stuff, that's cheap development. I mean, that's really taking what people, it's giving people, they just want to saturate that shit until people get tired of it. And right now, I'm saying I'm tired of it. It might take 20 fucking years for other people to get tired of it, but I'm tired of it right now.
And it's also got to do with, the new type of ways we're going to experience these games. Games on phones and games on, fully immersive type of scenes. These type of things are happening. And traditional games, like games that you would play with a controller at a computer, they gotta figure out how to be able to tell their story in those kind of worlds. You could have the same story, tell it in some sort of really gigantic open world thing. You could tell the same story in some sort of small guided adventure. You can tell the same story on your phone. You can tell the same story in some sort of 3D world. It's that kind of immersiveness that we want in the stories from games now.
Well, and I personally would like shorter segments. Mm-hmm. Some video games have this idea of episodes. I really like that concept. The Telltale games have done it. I like it because it gives me a stopping point.
Yeah.
And
so do you want? No, go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
For people who have busy lives, that I know the common thing that people say when they get older is, oh, well, I've grown up. I'm too old for video games. I mean, you still hear this, not as much, but you still hear this where it's like, I just don't have time.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, if you make a game that's 100+ fucking hours and like one sit down takes at least fucking 2 hours to do anything in,
yeah,
it's going to limit your audience.
So it might also come down to something as simple as, reducing the time between getting into the game and getting out of the game.
Right. And I mean, granted, they're save points, but
No, I don't mean a save point. I mean that moment from you clicking that icon to you having the control in your hand and doing something, whatever that hour that you have taken out of your life to do this in this game is. You got to reduce the amount of time that it takes to get to that point and to leave from that point, because everything else beyond that is all, shit. It's sort of like rewinding a movie before you get to play it.
Right, but at the same time, I also think that if you only have an hour, that hour has to mean something.
Exactly.
And a lot of games don't do that. It's like you have to do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours before you get anything like really interesting. I don't have time for that shit.
Yeah. I gotta get out of the woods in Skyrim.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to have this like lingering around and stuff like that. If people want that, that's fine. I just don't want that to dominate the market. I don't have time for that. I don't want to buy I don't want to buy like a $50, $60 game and then like, get into it, and then it's like, oh, well, you got to do this bullshit fucking side quest and this fucking side quest, and then like after about like 6 hours of that, you get into the meat of the story, and then you have 6 more hours of bullshit, and then you get to the meat of the story again. I don't like that shit.
So maybe we should look at making like not having side quests. Every quest is a meaty quest that interacts with the entire story.
I mean, there's sometimes where side quests work, like
Have you played The Witcher yet?
Redemption.
Huh?
No, I haven't played The Witcher. That's way too much fucking time.
The new Witcher 3 has like they said that the quests in that game are all so integral to the story that they don't have any side quests and no characters insignificant. So the economics of the story in that game are like, you know, completely tooled up.
So they fixed it from the other two?
Like that's all that I've heard. I can't get it to play on my computer.
Okay, because like until I actually hear that from somebody that I can trust, I'm going to be skeptical.
That's what I've read in all the articles, at least.
Right, because that's another thing you have to worry about, because just because you read it in an article doesn't mean that it like means anything. Because did they get paid to say that? Did they get paid to say that? I mean, look at fucking Watch Dogs. Prime fucking example.
I mean, haven't all the Witcher games been like, you know, super good, like leading up to that? Like, if it was even as good as the last ones.
I haven't played enough of The Witcher to know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I played a little bit of the first game,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't running that well on my computer, so I just didn't get into it.
So I'm on the second one right now, and I'm trying to get through the because they have a very in-depth like you know, you got to prepare for every battle type of thing.
Yeah.
Like, so before you go in, you got to kind of meditate and make sure you know what's going to come up, and you got to like put on your. It's a lot of work just for combat in that game, which isn't bad, but it's not something that's super compelling to me.
Right, and sometimes I find the gameplay mechanic to be something that, like, you either get one or the other. You either get like really good gameplay or you get really good story, and oftentimes those two worlds don't collide. Every once in a while, you get a Last of Us, which had very awesome gameplay.
Although you gotta admit that most of the game was killing other people.
Most of the game was killing other people, but while you were killing other people, you were having interactions, and it never had this like downtime. Like there was emotional weight to each scene. There was an intensity to it, and you can do that. You can do that and make it work. Plus, being in a post-apocalyptic setting, you know, that's essentially how the setting works anyway. So.
Do you think it's possible for us to create a meaningful narrative without having to be every other scene be killing people?
I do. And I'm not saying that killing people is wrong to do in video games like some people are. What I am saying is that there are other narratives to push, and no person's life revolves around killing people all the time.
Maybe I should have rephrased it. Maybe is it possible to have good gameplay without having to kill people all the time?
I think so. I mean, I personally think that the stuff in the Telltale games is kind of compelling.
Is that really gameplay? That's more like pointing and clicking with the avatar.
It's more like pointing and clicking. Their conversation mechanics. That's another interesting thing.
And that's a narrative. That's a narrative trope, though, isn't it? Or would you say that's a gameplay?
Well, you could have. Well, in some games they have racing and stuff like that, but I don't know. I mean,
like, couldn't they already have that in like Choose Your Own Adventure books and like scripts and things like this? You know,
right? But they're getting more interactive. They're allowing you to do different things, and so the real question is like how to make that interesting. I mean, Portal's a great game that has a great narrative, and you don't kill anybody in that game.
I feel the real question that could be asked is like, what is a game? You know, nowadays, since they have all these different kind of ways to create an interactive story, which one of these things are a game, and which one of these things are, you know, interactive stories, and which one of these things are just, you know, stories that aren't interactive at all?
I heard a lot of people complain about that with Gone Home, and Gone Home was actually one of the games that Gamergate was bitching about because they said
Gone Home.
Well, they said that like Gone Home got like way too positive reviews when, like, what is a game? Like, is that even a game?
Like there are a lot of games like Always Sometimes Monsters. That would also be a thing, and also that other game To the Moon. There are a lot of games where it's like you don't even have any agency in the story. You just experience what they put you through the narrative, and the only way to play the game is to advance the narrative.
So, like Flower or something like that?
Flower is something that's also on the opposite end of the spectrum. That's something that's purely a gameplay mechanic. The game is the mechanic.
Yeah, I mean, there are different ways, and I think that's fine for developers. But
Sometimes
that's I'm not saying that there's a linear path that they need to do. Like, experimenting is good, and that's what they're doing. I just don't like when developers play it safe way too much.
it sort of feels like I mean, not the playing it safe part thing. I think playing it safe is a problem with where you're looking to find your games, because there are a lot of other places to look at than the main news stories and things like this. Maybe AAA developers and big movies are. It's sort of like the what you said about Mad Max and Avengers. Avengers is most AAA games. They painted their audience. They need to make a profit because they just spent a bajillion dollars on it. Fury Road, even though they had Mad Max behind it and all these things, they were making it for a good movie. They didn't want to make a whole profit out of it, did they? I mean,
right, and that's, well, they did, but I mean that's real. That's really my criticism with a lot of games. Like, the heart isn't in the right place. They're pushing an agenda, and the more they push the agenda, the more I become resistant to it. One of the things that breaks my heart is that Hideo Kojima got forced out of the industry because they want to work on fucking cell phone games.
Yeah. No, that's not why he got forced out of the industry, though. He got forced out because he didn't want them to work on cell phone games. He kind of he made a big giant stink about them, like, we are a fucking the games fucking company, and they were like, okay, you're fired. Like, that's what it said according to internal reports. And it's like
and watch,
I think that's the best
after Metal Gear Solid, the Phantom Pain comes out. After that game comes out, I guarantee you, once the sales go for that, they are going to plummet.
They're actually making a lot more money than they ever did before by doing that. Like, because before, so in Japan, all the Japanese game companies, they all do that, right? And they all do stuff like pachinko and gambling games and other shit like this. You know what I mean?
So they're just making it for Japanese people?
No, they make the most money, they make the most profit by making these games that are only on those things. They're AAA games.
They're gonna get fucking hacked.
No,
they're gonna get fucking hacked.
You know what they're gonna get? Hundreds of millions of yen. They figured it out. They figured out the best way to create money out of someone who plays a game is to make them for gambling games. The end.
Yeah.
So actually, I looked it up. I looked up Konami getting hacked, and it turned out they actually have already been hacked back in 2013. So I'm pretty sure they won't allow that to happen again.
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is that
they should get kicked in the corporate nuts.
Basically, there should be like a mass boycott of Konami after the game comes out.
I know, I haven't bought a Konami game in a long time, so I think I was already
pretty good, but it's a lot to pay for a fucking demo.
Yeah, I didn't like the new Metal Gear Solid game. The whole way it plays is just too different from the other ones.
I don't know. I like it. It took time, but I actually do like the new gameplay mechanic.
The world is great. I love how they've made the world, like it's this large area where you can go ahead and affect things like that. But just they made it so different from what it was before that it's more of a reboot than a continuation, in my opinion. It's sort of like what DMC was to Devil May Cry. It's so different from what it was before.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. So did you want to wrap this up?
If you want, sure.
Okay. So
hopefully we have enough for you to edit into something.
Oh yeah, yeah, that'll be the thing. So just out of curiosity, what do you think are some of the best games as far as storytelling goes?
As far as storytelling goes,
Yeah.
uh,
Recent, old, doesn't matter.
I guess the new one, Pillars of Oblivion, I think is the new one. I think like they've had so many new games that came out that are so much beyond anything that I ever thought storytelling could be. You know, let me look at some of my recent games and tell you what I've been playing. I guess Long Dark is not really good at telling a story. Uh, Thomas Was Alone was really good at telling a story. That was a game that tells like really good story. And Hotline Miami too was also very good. Papers, Please. That's a really good game to tell a story right there.
That's hilarious because Papers, Please is essentially what my job is.
Yeah. So how many people get to be in the welfare system today, Ren?
How many
Approved.
people get to be on the approved welfare system?
Yeah.
I don't
Do you get a
actually.
big stamp? Do you get a large stamp to hit on things?
I do stamp things, but most of the stuff's done on the computer. Like that's like a really archaic system that they're working on because I think the game takes place in like what the 40s or 50s.
It takes place in the 80s
Okay, yeah.
when they're opening the border of the Cold War.
Oh yeah. It's the East and West Germany, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then there's that one fucking guy that annoys the shit out of me because he keeps on bringing that fake passport.
Look, he's your friend. You know, he just wants to get in the country. You know what? Isn't this passport perfectly legal? I scribbled on it all night.
I bet you let him in, didn't you?
No, I let him in when he actually gives you the good passport. If you deny him enough times, he does come back with the real passport, and he gives you a coin, and he's like, "Thank you for actually making me follow the rules."
Okay. Yeah, because I think I even denied him that because I was like, something's fishy.
Nope, I checked it all out. That good one is actually a good one.
Okay.
You're a fucktard if you did that.
I think I did let him in, but I can't remember.
It doesn't make a difference. It's just a game.
Yeah.
And additionally,
I don't have to shoot people either.
yeah, exactly. Additionally, Middle Earth: Shadow of Mordor is very good for telling a story, as well as, like I said before,
I
Joe
heard it's
Deaver's
only
Lone
good
Wolf.
if you have a PS4.
Sure. I have no problems with playing it on my computer.
Oh, well, that's the equivalent, pretty much.
My computer's the equivalent of a PS4.
Well, depending on like what software you have, yeah.
This is like a 3-year-old computer.
Yeah, but at the same time, like if you have enough like RAM or whatever, you can totally run games on it.
Right.
It's just, do you trick out a computer or do you buy a console?
Computer?
Yeah, I haven't done that yet, so you know.
I mean, you don't even have you just need like a mid-range sort of computer, not the best one.
Yeah. See, I don't like thinking about that stuff, so that's why I'm a console gamer.
All right. If you ever want to get some more information on PC gaming and how like to fully effectively use your PC to play games, or your Mac for that matter, because most games are now mostly play on both nowadays, just go to r/PC Master Race and check out some of their tutorials.
Okay.
That's my suggestion for if you want to severely expand your gaming repertoire to pull from, because not all games are those 100-hour explore fests.
Right.
There are some games like Super Puzzle Platform or Freedom Planet, which are like Sonic, or just like Flash game on your computer, like as a real game.
Yeah.
Even State of Decay, I guess, would be like one of those type of games. But you're never going to be able to play State of Decay on your computer or your PS4 because it's made by Microsoft. But Long Dark was a really good game. I hope that their story mode is particularly good. It's a shout out for any game. That's probably the one I played the most.
Yeah. All right, and for me, I would say that probably the best narrative games that I've played as of yet are I played a little bit of Life is Strange. That's pretty interesting. That's a game that doesn't rely on killing people, and the gameplay mechanics kind of interesting with the time travel. I'm playing the Game of Thrones Telltale game. Telltale's always cool.
Mhm.
They have yet to disappoint me as of late. Some of their old stuff is kind of shoddy, but like their new stuff is spot on.
What, Sam Max isn't perfect?
It it might
It's not.
it Sam and Max is perfect for their new system. They should totally do it.
They did Sam Max. They're old Sam Max games.
Right, but I mean like using their new game engine that they use now, I think would be really cool for a Sam and Max game.
Another Sam Max game, a new season.
Yeah. I mean, what's wrong with that? I mean,
They have like 4 seasons already.
that's fun. I really love the animated show.
You played the other Sam Max Telltale games, right?
No, I have not.
Because the guy who made Telltale was like the guy who made Sam Max.
I understand that. But hey, I was limited with the games I played when I was younger.
It's
I
fine.
only played console games, and I played a couple PC games, but mostly I was like stuck on emulators.
When I watched, I didn't play the original Sam Max. I just watched it. I watched it
Okay.
online.
It's really odd because I kind of have a problem with that with some games. Like to me, it's like I can never say that I played a game if all I did was watch.
I want to see you. I want to. Okay, so they have this game called A Mind Forever Voyaging, right? And it's a text game that's super hard to play. I watched them play it, and I feel like they had a hard time playing it.
Hmm.
It's a game that I would never have. You said 1,000-hour games are too long. This is a text-based adventure game. No point in clicking. You got to put in the right things, and you need a little book with you to read through it to play the game. But the game is amazing. The game is so amazing. You play in the game A Mind Forever Voyaging. You are the computer simulation, and you receive inputs from the doctor, which is what you're playing. Like you, the player, is the doctor who's putting inputs to the computer, and you have the simulation. No, you're the simulation. You get the inputs from the doctor, and you got to walk around in the simulation trying to tell them what the world's going to be like in the future. It's sort of like that movie, not Source Code. What's that one with Jake Gyllenhaal in it? Was it Source Code? Yeah. It's like that movie Source Code,
Okay,
a text adventure.
interesting.
It's a fun watch, not a fun play. Because he reads it to you. You don't gotta.
Shadowrun Lockdown is not a. I mean, it might have a multiplayer expansion, but it's not a multiplayer game.
Right.
Yeah, it's just one of their. It's just another sequel to one of their games.
Shadowrun Lockdown.
Boston Lockdown, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the one that's online.
Is it only online or is it
That
one player?
that game, that Shadowrun game that they play that on is the online Shadowrun. When they
Okay,
made the
that-
online Shadowrun, they made it with 2 versions, an MMO and a campaign server. And the campaign server is online. Not online. Single player.
Yeah, so I would just play it single player. Okay.
But what other games besides Telltale, the Game of Thrones game anymore?
I mean, The Last of Us.
Yeah.
I still don't get tired of that game.
Hmm.
I played it on hard mode. I now have to play it on really hard mode. I forget what it's called. Survival mode, I think.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. But that was really fun. I like the Shadowrun games,
Mm.
you know, as we're talking about them.
Yeah.
And I played a little bit of Ni no Kuni, but I haven't played a lot.
Ni no Kuni. Oh, the one by Studio Ghibli.
Yeah. Is that like good or
I played it a little bit. It's like Pokemon.
yeah.
You get little monsters that fight for you, and you have a little pal who goes neat or tidy. That was so tidy. Instead of
So is
saying
it
neat,
like a good game or
it's an alright RPG. I mean, I wouldn't say it's particularly good. It didn't compel me to stick with it, but
yeah,
Yeah.
that was kind of the problem that I had with it. It was like, you know, every once in a while I'll play a game that's like, holy fucking shit, this is the be all end all.
yeah,
And then I won't have that experience for a long time.
yeah. I haven't really once I've been trying to figure out what makes games good and stuff like this. It's been kind of hard to find a game that makes you kind of go, wow. I guess Fallout 4 was the most recent one to make me kind of hype like that, but I gotta wait till it comes out.
Well, and you're making the pre-order mistake of saying that a game's good before even playing it.
I didn't pre-order it.
Okay.
The only reason why I would pre-order it is if you had to get that wrist-based thing, because you can get. So what they're doing with the new one is they're gonna sell you the Pip-Boy, and you can put your phone in it, and there's an app on your phone that actually affects the game, so you can do the Pip-Boy stuff on a real Pip-Boy.
But you could make a. Does it have to work with the Pip-Boy that comes with it, or could you?
It's an app that you put on your phone.
So you essentially don't. You could make your own Pip-Boy, or you could buy this little expansion or whatever.
You don't even need all of that. You can just get the app on your phone.
Exactly. So just get the app on your phone.
You're right. You're
Yeah.
definitely right about that. But it wouldn't be as cool. You know?
Yeah, because you're one of those people that's like, shut up and take my money.
No, I'm not.
It was great talking to you, and look forward to seeing you again, and maybe we'll continue this conversation.
Anytime.